All right, so we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to 100 Life Science Executives, what the past 90 days have been like for business. My name is Matt Storr, and I work for Synthesis Inc. right here in Durham. On behalf of the North Carolina Life Sciences Virtual Networking Group, welcome. Tonight, doing the heavy lifting and presenting for us is Don Alexander of GeneCoda. I've personally found his experience and insights to be extremely helpful as we continue our journey together in these uncharted territories. And I'm looking forward to learning what he has to share with us tonight. Briefly before we start, I'm going to walk you through using this platform in case you haven't used it before. If you have used it before, you've got about a time to go get one drink and come back. And by the way, thank you for being adventurous and using this new platform with us, Hopin. Now, Hopin's a pretty powerful platform, but tonight we're only using some of its capabilities. On the left side of your screen, or here, you'll see the different areas of the event tonight. Starting from the top, reception is where you entered and saw the welcome message that brought you here, the stage. This is where today's presentation is going to happen in just a few minutes. The next item down is sessions, and these are roundtable discussions. Tonight, after the presentation, Don is going to move over to the session table to take questions and have a back and forth discussion. You can choose to view or actively participate by joining the table, and up to 10 people can actively participate at one time. Now, since the question and answer portion is going to happen after the presentation, if you'd like to use chat to kind of like keep notes on the questions you want, make sure you click on Event Chat. That's viewable event-wide, so that means when you go from the stage over to sessions, you'll still be able to scroll up and see the chat. At the very bottom is the expo area. Here, there's virtual booths for sponsors and also the North Carolina Life Sciences Networking Group. Now, the chat on the right-hand side of the screen, it works mostly like any other chat on online video platforms. Just be aware that there's event-wide chat and section-specific chat. Again, if you want to use that chat to move from here to the sessions, make sure you're using the event chat. Finally, a little bit about the North Carolina Life Sciences Networking Group. Our mission is to keep the connections alive that make the life sciences industry here in North Carolina so special. As we transit this era of physical distancing, it's more important than ever to keep making new connections, to keep learning, keep sharing, and keep helping one another. We focus our efforts on two primary areas. One, we offer free facilitation and event platform usage. So if you have a networking group that wants to use Hopin, I can help you with that. So we run that for virtual events for other life science networking groups in the area. Also, we self-host a few events per month, like Last Friday Networking, which happens naturally on the last Friday of the month. We also have another presentation coming up on the 24th, and you can find details about that by joining our LinkedIn group, or you can follow our Eventbrite page, our public calendar, and you can find the links to this stuff at the NC Life Sciences Virtual Networking Group booth in the Expo section. Thank you for attending today and making it through my introductory information. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Don. Remember, after his presentation, head to the sessions area for the roundtable discussion where you can participate or just view.
Great, thank you, Matt. Really appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. And we want to, again, thank the North Carolina Life Sciences Virtual Networking Group for hosting tonight's webinar. Make sure, as Matt said, and join our LinkedIn group when you have the opportunity to do that. And we have a great lineup of events throughout this fall. And, I'm sure that'll carry on into 2021 as well. Briefly, my firm, GeneCoda, we're a professional and executive search firm for those that might not have had the opportunity to speak with. And what we really do is connect outstanding firms in the life sciences sector with various functional executives who help bring game-changing products to the market. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that at the conclusion of the presentation, as Matt said, we'll do some impromptu question and answers within the tab that he mentioned, the sessions tab. But I'm also really interested to hear your feedback and what you're experiencing. So before we get going hardcore into the data, so to speak, I wanted to give you a little bit of a precursor about, what you're about to see. So first and foremost, this data set that you're about to see, these were companies that we contacted as an organization for business opportunities for our own firm. So what you're about to see is 100% primary data that we made or gathered rather through phone calls. Now you'll know notice the data set is not an extraordinarily large one. There are in fact thousands of companies in the life sciences sector, but we figured 100 was a good number to look at and get at least some sense of what might be happening in the marketplace. Something else to recognize is that not everyone is always open to discussing their situations. So we were able to, in some cases, not get all of the data that we were after, but it's important to recognize that aspect. Additionally, there is a bias because our firm tends to work with a lot of development stage organizations, so small, I guess what you might call small to mid-size companies. So there is again, a bias towards that kind of grouping within this data set, if you will. And something else to recognize is that the data was also compiled from calls that were made actually in the second quarter of this year, which is really the height, if you will, of the COVID-19 downturn, if you will. So it's important to keep in mind, I think, the time frame that we're all talking about. As I mentioned, not everybody gave us all of the information that we asked for, but if a contact did volunteer at least two of the three main questions we had, then we added them to our list and later went back and subdivided the results by market segment and focus area, which we'll get further into in the slides themselves. Now, our main questions were, are you planning to hire? Our second question was, what has COVID-19's impact been on your business? And then, we did ask if the company or the organization was in fact raising funds. So those are our three questions that we tried to ask each company that we spoke with. And what we'll go through now is some of that data. So thanks again for your time, and hopefully this screen share will work appropriately. Matt, please let me know if you see any issues with, and thank you for this, with what you're seeing on your end. So we'll go ahead and get going. And I did want to point out that also, my apologies, this technology I think is new to many of us. And, my hope is that you can see these different graphs and charts, and we'll go through a bit of this. If anyone needs a copy of this PDF file, I call it a slide deck, if you will, we can certainly provide that to you as well, because all of this information is in fact anonymized. So we'll start out, again with the titles here, and, you can take a look at the various titles, if you will, of the people that we contacted. And I think what you'll notice about the titles as you're looking through them is that all of the titles really were at the V and C-suite level of these organizations, with about 63% actually at the C-suite. Obviously a fair portion of those were CEOs of companies, but then if you were to add in general management and presidents, that really takes up quite frankly, the preponderance of the people that we did in fact speak with. And again, this is a PDF and not a PowerPoint, so I'm going to have to kind of navigate scrolling down here. So the first thing that we asked about, of course, was hiring, because that's a big part of our business. And what we found was, in essence, 45% yes, 55% no. So again, roughly an even distribution of companies in the life sciences industry, as we define it. About half were hiring, half weren't. So, sorry, lost the cursor there. And then what we asked about was the timing, as to the hiring. And, the not applicable, I did want to point out the not applicable segment is really either a no, we're not hiring, or in some cases it might not have been discussed. That would prototypically be rare with us making the call. But then we also asked about sometimes plans for hiring were into 2021 or longer. So that big basket, if you will, was either no, we're not hiring, it wasn't for some reason discussed, or it completely went into 2021 or beyond. So we saw kind of that 1 to 3 month window, 3 to 6 month window. And now, which again, roughly represented, the "Are you hiring?" question from earlier. Then we went to speak about COVID-19's impact in that particular question. And we found that, again, about 9% were busier. We found, about 26% indicated, again, what I'm going to call a no impact, or wasn't necessarily any busier or a downturn. It was maybe a non-starter in a way. A mixed business line dependent, what that means, and it's a smaller sliver, but it was dependent on a particular business line, may have been not doing as well as another business line. So we did have companies that have multiple business lines. Perhaps one was impacted and another wasn't. And then again, about 25%, we didn't really get into that discussion. So what we can conclude from, I think, looking at this slide anyway, is that about an equal mix were busier or had no impact as to those in the sector that did in fact experience a downturn. And again, those downturns ranged in terms of answer. Some of them were pretty significant. So that could have ranged in variation between down a little and down a lot. So then we went on to talk about raising funds. And again, we didn't get into this discussion with as many as the group, if you will, as you'll see. But we had, again, a fairly even distribution of those 100 that we did ask. We had, about half said, yes, we are in fact raising money right now. And about half of those that responded, we're not raising money right now. So that was kind of an interesting dynamic as well. Then what we did, because I thought, for our own business, this was going to be a pretty interesting profile, is to say, okay, so it's interesting to posit those questions, but we kind of need to look at them by market segments. So that's in fact what we did. So, as you kind of look at this graph, if you will, I'll run through a couple of the definitions of the segments. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure and leave you with here is that this particular group, the great preponderance of people that we spoke with, clearly denoted by the numbers here, were product makers versus those in the service industry. So I imagine most people on the call know many of these definitions in terms of biotech and pharmaceutical. CDMO is a contract development and manufacturing organization. And I'll also point out tools, which is our way of talking about consumables, capital equipment, software that kind of what I call power the scientific R&D industry. So, you would take a company like, say, Illumina would be a company that would fall in the tools market, if you will. So as we moved into then the market segment and the focus areas, we also thought, gee, it would be interesting to know, out of those that are in fact hiring, or where the market segment that's hiring equals yes, how does that kind of change the dynamic? So, of those that responded yes, and that would be the group that was in fact either planning on hiring or hiring in the earlier slide. These were in fact the demographics of those organizations. Now, what we'll do in just a few minutes is look at those who said yes versus no. But I found it kind of difficult or challenging to have visually two charts on the same page, and people still, hopefully being able to see this. So this type of screen share setting, I'll include more of that in the actual summary that we'll talk about. So we'll see, again, tools was pretty strong in the hiring segment, and medtech, actually surprisingly so in some sense. And then we, of course, looked at the market segment where the hiring would equal no, if you will. Biotech was a little bit higher than we thought it would be, but these were the demographics, again, of the organizations that were classified, as to the earlier slide that said, the market segment is no, we are not, in fact, hiring. So I'll give you a minute to kind of look at that as well. And again, what we'll do in a minute is kind of compare those two, but in more of a summary fashion. So then what we wanted to take a look at is the focus area. And again, we'll go through some of the definitions as we look at these, but the focus areas we thought about in terms of the therapeutic area. If a company was focused on, say, developing drugs in the cardiovascular arena, for instance. We see consumables again. This would be reagents, antibodies, perhaps other types of consumables that would be used in the industry. Drug delivery, or firms that are focused principally on delivering drugs through one or more formats. Organizations involved in drug discovery, very early stage work. The term multiple means multiple, perhaps they have multiple therapeutic areas. So oftentimes we find that is the case, as well as platforms, which would be organizations that that have a basic scientific platform that again may be applied to different areas of fundamental research. And finally, our friends in the software sector, which I must say, the software sector is one of those that has not only weathered the storm, it's actually doing very very well. So we'll see that again in a moment. So again, we look at the focus areas, and the focus area of hiring, who's and I apologize, give me 1 second here. Yeah, I must have reversed these slides. So we'll start with the no's first, who is not hiring. Of those who responded no, again, hiring on the earlier slide, these were the demographics of the actual organizations who were not, in fact, hiring. I'll give you a moment to take a look at that. And I do apologize. All this data is, I know, a lot to kind of take in, maybe in this setting, but hopefully it'll be useful with respect to the summary. And importantly, the focus area of hiring as to who is actually hiring, and of those responded, again, in the earlier slide, these are the demographics of the organizations that are in fact hiring. And once again, we'll take a look in the summary of, I guess, what I'm going to call the net differential of who's kind of hiring versus not. So, excuse me. So with that, we'll bring up a brief summary here, and hopefully you all can see that okay. But this is what we concluded from the other slides. is that, although some companies aren't hiring at present, many of them had delayed plans, if you will, with focus around the end of Q3 and Q4, and really pushing on into 2021. When we asked the question, of a number of people, the answer was really found more from a hiring point of view in that we've delayed plans versus we've canceled, hiring. And I think, again, a lot of that can be found in the continued information that I read. There are very few mass layoffs, if you will, in the industry. So I think this continues to be a robust industry, although it has weathered a downturn. More than half the companies surveyed do not have plans to add headcount this year, which is certainly understandable. But about, the flip side of that is about half do. And, COVID-19 caused an even distribution of companies that faced a downturn with those that are in fact busier. And that slide should actually say with those that are busier or that it didn't impact, if you will. So about half, downturn, half busier / no impact. About half the companies we spoke with were raising funds. And maybe some of the more, to me, interesting aspects of what we put together, or what we looked at, is that for the market segments, those that are, have what I'm going to call net hiring, and remember that about half the companies were hiring and half weren't. But for the market segments that have a net hiring, that is, more of those organizations seem to be doing hiring within their same category than those that are not. We saw that CDMOs, and the rise of manufacturing, and in particular in the biologics framework, and in particular gene and cell therapy, those companies seem to be hiring. And to a big surprise to me personally was that, at least of the companies we spoke with, medical technologies was a net hiring plus. Now you contrast that against, I think, companies that are in some medical devices where they have not been able to actually get in and physically see surgeons. That was a little bit of a surprise. The pharmaceutical industry also kind of a net, small increase. And the tools segment of the market. So again, the instrumentation, consumables, software, and principally that, I will say that market segment for software was really the strongest out of those groupings. Not surprising, I suppose, with all of the data analysis and trends towards artificial intelligence, I suppose. And so then for the market segments that weren't or did not have are not net hiring, if you will, the biotech side, not by a wide margin, but the biotech side and the CRO side, not surprisingly, wasn't doing a lot of hiring from the people that we talked to overall. And then the focus areas that were net positive, cardiovascular, again, maybe a little bit of a surprise in that some of those trials one would think would have been delayed. Oncology, not surprising at all. Oncology, by and large, has not, to me, from the people I've talked with, seemed to really skip a beat. Drug delivery technologies remain strong, and software we've talked about. And then for the focus areas, those that were net negative, if you will, central nervous system, consumables, drug discovery and infectious disease, which was a little bit, again, that might have been a little bit of a surprise with all of the federal research money and research money, I think, generally flowing into maybe COVID-19. And then finally, the platform side was a bit on the negative as well. So those are the trends that we kind of took away from the people that we talk with, again, to wrap up a small, relatively small data set in the bigger picture of things, but a meaningful one because of the levels of the people that I think that we spoke with. And again, I'll just close the formal presentation with the idea that I believe that this, the tail end of this third quarter, fourth quarter, we see this as again, picking up steam. The last 4 weeks, I can tell you that our firm has gotten busier, and we are starting to see, more and more job opportunities, not only with our firm, but other people that we're just broadly speaking with. So again, I hope this data has been useful for you. I hope you were able to hear and see it all. I guess I'll find out in a minute. But that concludes the formal presentation. And thanks once again to the North Carolina Life Sciences Virtual Networking Group for hosting this and for hosting all of the great sessions that will be coming up this fall.